in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, From Video to Revenue, Fixing the Broken OTT Video Value Chain. I'm Ashley Hazlitt, Marketing Communications Manager at Yankee Group, and I'd like to share some general housekeeping before we get started. Today's formal presentation will last about 45 minutes. During the last 15 minutes of the hour, our speakers will take some questions from the audience. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation using the Questions tab on your control panel. In addition, during the presentation, you'll be asked several poll questions. Please respond to these questions simply by clicking an answer choice on the presentation screen. We will share results of these polls in real time. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Brian Partridge, Vice President of Research at Yankee Group. Brian?
Thanks so much, Ashley, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. As you likely know, the transition from broadcast to over-the-top video content is in the early stages of a great evolution, much like this shift from print to online media. At the same time, mobile video consumers are growing, and video traffic is nearing 50% of all mobile data traffic and growing every day. Communication service providers are struggling to meet the demand as mobile viewers are placing on their networks. Despite these struggles to meet demand, the shift in video presents network service providers with a significant opportunity to monetize their investment in networks. Traditional broadcast video and physical markets are approximately a $150 billion industry in the U.S. alone. Sorry for that technical difficulty. Everyone in the broadcast value chain, from content producers, aggregators to service providers, share in the profits from value-added services. This same evolution can happen with over-the-top video, although it is just beginning to do so. In order to fully get there, network service providers need an architecture that facilitates the delivery of revenue via several streams of monetization. Those streams can include quality of experience-based subscriptions, quality of experience-based revenue sharing, and ultimately advertising revenue. And really that's the crux of what we're going to be discussing today. So as Ashley mentioned, my name is Brian Partridge. I'm a Vice President from the Yankee Group, and I will serve as both presenter and moderator today. We're very excited to engage with the audience on this important topic of fixing the over-the-top value chain. Our agenda today will include a look at some key consumer trends around the time they spend with media, most importantly video, and the types of devices they're accessing content with. And how consumers in the United States are interacting with different media platforms on average between years 2009 and 2010. So the bottom line is really no surprises here, but what's of note is the 28.2% growth in mobile, where we see the greatest year-over-year positive delta. Underlying this trend is the growing number of U.S. consumers with smartphones, which give them more powerful processing, excellent screen capabilities, and more compelling mobile and internet video experiences coming online, delivered over managed networks and through the cloud. Traditional physical media such as magazines and newspapers continue to exhibit negative growth, and this trend will only accelerate with the growing popularity of tablet computers, new platforms, digital magazines and newspapers content consumption. Over-the-top video service models are starting to really take off in popularity. Pure OTT service models such as Netflix have certainly, and Netflix has certainly been the most talked about company in the world of video streaming services, most recently because of significant price increases and a flip-flopping decision to separate their physical and digital rental services. Despite Netflix's business challenges, including the rising cost of content, it has done many things right in its business, including a wide support for a range of tablets, gaming systems, and smartphones. It's now seeking growth in international markets and counts over 22 million subscribers. Competition in this segment is becoming fierce as over-the-top additional competitors such as Hulu grow their paid user base with compelling content and wide device support. Content owners such as HBO are now providing stream services through their customers, although they do require the consumer to have a relationship with a content's rights holder, such as a cable operator. Streaming video content over the top to a variety of devices is clearly the way of the future. As we know, currently this traffic is rarely monetized by service providers in any meaningful way beyond all-you-can-eat or tiered data service plans. And that is really the crux of what we're going to be discussing in this webinar, is how to change that picture. The question is now how to evolve from providing sort of a platform for over-the-top to enable more of a through-the-middle value proposition to content owners and subscribers. On slide 6 here, what we're looking at are some key statistics that animate the amount of change that network service providers are currently going through in their business. So billions of people and things are connected to the network, which challenge their ability to deliver customer experience. We see an astronomical increase in the amount of data traffic driven by the popularity of video, more powerful devices coming online, such as tablets and smartphones, coupled with the popularity of downloadable mobile applications, have created a powerful win-win for mobile app developers and quickly crowned mobility kings of Apple and Google. All these trends speak to the immense importance of the connectivity ecosystem, but also underscores immense challenges to the business models that have fueled decades of growth and profits. In short, the telecom business model is reaching its breaking point. One of the major consumer trends is certainly around the demand for content everywhere. Where we used to see a siloed relationship between content source and device, such as your voice video on demand library and a television, are evolving to include access from tablets, PCs, laptops, and smartphones, which places a much greater emphasis on network for quality of experience and the quote-unquote cloud for content storage and rights management. Network service providers have begun to take steps to give consumers what they want by forming content relationships with popular over-the-top brands such as YouTube and Facebook. And we'd really like to hear about your plans in this area, which leads us into our first poll question. So here we're going to ask you to answer this poll. The poll question is, have you deployed application-aware service plans to date? Those would include something like a YouTube streaming plan. Just going to take a second here to collect the results, and then we'll see what comes back. Okay, so I'm seeing the results in real time, and not so surprised that no was the predominant answer here with 57% of the respondents. 17% have answered yes, and 26% are unsure. Matej, any surprise that the majority of the audience have yet to deploy application-aware service plans?
No, I mean, that's consistent with what we're seeing in the market, that it's still mostly managed through data services and not so much through application-aware services.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks for your response there. Moving on to the next slide. So here we're looking at some data that is a combination of sources, both our consumer surveys that we look at in the United States as well as in Europe. And really what this is telling us is that consumers are using mobile devices on a more regular basis to access video content. So as a screen for video, the television is facing a mounting competition from PC, smartphones, tablets in homes with those devices. On handsets, what we find is that viewers are still preferring shorter form content such as user-generated video and services such as YouTube. The tablet, however, is quickly proving to be a platform for the types of content that generate significant revenues, such as TV episodes and longer form content such as movies. And what we find when we look into this data is that multi-screen customers are premium customers. So consumers with access to multiple fixed and mobile devices are using the screen closest at hand. And in the 25 to 34 age group, a core market for pay TV and mobile TV services, they're already moving away from the TV set as the only device to access video. This has huge implications for network service providers who need to obviously satisfy those premium demographics and customer segments and have to take into account this desire to move to multi-screen content access. So, most notably in terms of their business model is they need to adjust their terms and conditions for subscription services and need to think about new ways to monetize these trends with things like pay-per-session services and advertising models. Matei and Bill will both provide a perspective on that and how Connexus is helping to move that ball forward. Slide 11 is Yankee Group's version of the traffic versus revenue slide, which has been burned into our retinas in a variety of different contexts in many ways. This speaks to the data tsunami. I have a similar slide that shows traffic versus CapEx budget over time, but it's really too depressing to show. The bottom line here is that the business model for data services is nearing its breaking point, and as operators, we need the band-aids and we need the long-term answers to allow us to be able to monetize this shift from voice to data-centric business models. So at Yankee Group, we believe that part of the answer is sort of spoken to by the advertising business model and two-sided business models generally. So in the United States, the advertising industry is a $62 billion per year industry. The current shift presents players in the fixed and mobile networking landscape a significant opportunity to monetize the delivery capabilities if they can develop an architecture that enables them to do so profitably. Fortunately, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We only need to look to the broadcast, what happened in broadcast for lessons learned. In the early days of broadcast, it was the producers who were profiting from content. As the industry matured, an end-to-end ecosystem evolved whereby not only producers, but also the satellite and cable providers were able to get a share of the revenue generated. Today, when a customer subscribes to value-added service, such as a movie package, everyone in the value chain gets a cut. However, for-fee services set an expectation for quality. The broadcast industry was able to find the right ratio between cost reduction and customer satisfaction. And while the technology in these worlds is different, the lesson for fixed and mobile networking are the same. And so on this ad spending here, we see that eyeballs and advertising spend are actively shifting from traditional print and broadcast media to the online delivery channels. And so the biggest question to answer, and for all of us to be asking ourselves, is just how much of this transition and this shift will be actually captured by network-based service providers. Subscribers have demonstrated a willingness to pay for quality content experiences across their connected devices, and that is something that can be turned on by network owners and can only be turned on by network operators. What's needed are more viable network architectures and business models that enable network service providers to get their fair share. So Matei and Bill will be talking a bit about that. So before I transition over to Matei, let's ask another poll question. So our second poll question is a follow-up to the last one, which is forward-looking. So are you planning to deploy application-aware service plans? So the first question is, have you deployed? The predominant answer was no. Now the question is, are you planning to deploy in the next 12 months? And I'll pause for the results to come in. Okay, so here we have a more even split. The predominant response was don't know or unsure. That was nearly half of the audience. 30% indicated that they are planning to deploy in the next 12 months. So, and no is a quarter of the audience. Bill, any surprises in the response in the answers that we have here?
Well, I think, Brian, that it's certainly showing a shift in terms of the intentions of the operators. You know, I think a number that says 30% as the majority of the decided people on the call really show that I think people are thinking about it. I think from what we are seeing, operators are certainly interested in finding ways to monetize both in order to capture more value internally, but also to capture and deliver more value to subscribers themselves in real time. So, you know, I think the fact that there's a don't know means that operators are searching for ways, and yes, certainly seems to indicate that, you know, many are doing it and intending to do it going forward. So I think this pretty much matches what we're seeing in the industry and in the marketplace with service providers. Certainly a lot of interest and a desire to do something in the space.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm going to now transition and hand over the presentation to Matej, who's going to talk to us about the Connexus ecosystem. So, Matej, please take it from here.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Brian. And you know, I'm going to start by talking about what is the scope of Connexus, so people understand, you know, what we're talking about. What Connexus is a solution architecture that's aimed at enabling service providers to increase their relevance in the OTT video value chain. You know, today, the over-the-top players have really taken the dominance, both in terms of you know, collecting revenue, but also in terms of brand. Getting their brand out there in front of consumers, and have, you know, utilized kind of the excess capacity network to deliver, you know, some decent services and get a lot of eyeballs. But the service provider is not really participating in a way that allows them to fund their infrastructure. And so the question is, what is the service provider's role, and how can they participate? And Connexus aims to provide a very important tool for the service provider. And the way Connexus works is, you know, it's a very collaborative, effectively framework for, you know, innovative vendors to build solutions to help service providers monetize OTT video, both by, you know, doing interoperability, you know, joint solution use case development, and co-marketing activities. And we have a lot of you know, co-marketing activities lined up. That's one of the starting points. But also, we are going to be, you know, working within the scope of some standards. You know, the Connexus itself is not a standard, but we will be either leveraging or liaising with standards bodies to make sure that, you know, where it makes sense to standardize certain things, that can happen, and to make sure there's some critical mass towards that goal. You know, in that sense, we believe in openness and collaboration. That's one of the keys to making this, you know, to enabling service providers to monetize video and become part of the value chain. Next slide, please, Brian. So, just at a high level, what we see happening today is, you know, with the deployment of 3G networks and now 4G networks, service providers in some degree put up excess capacity in relation to their traditional demand for voice and you know, SMS and email and the odd, you know, web browsing session. What has happened is over-the-top players like Netflix and YouTube came in and you know, sucked up most of that excess capacity by offering, you know, very, very cheap or free video services and getting a lot of viewership over the top. However, the service provider is not getting the revenue back from those services to be able to invest in their infrastructure, and they're seeing the impact on their infrastructure and the worsening of the quality of experience, but they're not getting the revenue to invest back and build out the infrastructure based on the growth in demand. So that is why the value chain is broken, is because this will inadvertently impact Netflix and YouTube, because they will not get the quality of experience needed to grow their business past a certain point. So it is in everyone's interest to collaborate to build a sustainable business model. And you know, we were starting off from a point of basically every man for himself, but we need to evolve into much more of a collaborative model to make this a success for everybody. Next slide, please. So what we're seeing in the networks today is as the video traffic grows, the quality of experience is actually decreasing. And To some people, that might be a little bit of a surprise as they see service providers market, HSPA plus and LTE and all of these faster theoretical speeds. But in effect, what we're seeing in the networks is, during busy periods, video QoE can be, 50% of the video traffic can have unacceptable quality of experience, according to our measurement, score. And that is really impacting the ability for everyone's business to grow in this area. So the question becomes, how do we improve the quality of experience, and who gets to pay for that, and what is a reasonable share, both from a subscriber's point of view, from a service provider point of view, from a content aggregator point of view, and from an advertiser's point of view. We believe in the long term, all of those stakeholders have to share in this, both in the cost and in the success. Next slide, please. So we're going to jump into a poll question, and what we're seeing out there today is service providers deploying CDN technology. And one of the things with CDN technology is, as service providers deploy that, they get into the business of actually running a video service, because they are interfacing and providing a service to a content provider. And so what we'd like to understand is, are you planning to deploy CDN technology in the next 12 months? So we're going to pause for a moment for the answers. And what we're seeing is, so predominantly it's a don't know with some yeses. I think what we're seeing in the market today is the tier ones are certainly moving towards CDN deployment. Verizon has announced and deployed their CDN in the middle of this year. And there have been a number of other service providers have announced that. It has not so much been a trend in tier 2 and 3 service providers. So a small group of tier 1s have done it. And certainly a lot of people are still, looking at the space and trying to decide if they're going to do it or not. So if we look at what we see as an inflection point for OTT video, a big important trend that has happened historically that is a good analogy is, if we look at what happened to print media and the way it was transformed by online search, namely Google, is, effectively by making information accessible online, Google has effectively taken the revenue from print media and grown a very large business in search based on advertising, and to some degree a lot of social networking companies are playing in that space as well in a different way. So we actually see the same type of dynamic happening in broadcast video, where the eyeballs are already moving from broadcast video to OTT, and there's a huge, as Brian pointed out, there's a huge revenue base for broadcast video advertising, over $60 billion in the U.S. alone, and that as the eyeballs move from broadcast to OTT, so will the revenue, and it's just a question of when. So that is a massive opportunity for the entire ecosystem, for service providers, for content providers and advertisers. Now the question is, who is going to capture that opportunity? Will the service provider play in that space, and how? And the challenge is for the service provider to play in that space, and to some degree for content providers and advertisers as well, we need to get the subscriber a quality of experience that they're willing to pay for and actually view. And the question is, how do we do that? So what Connexus is attempting to do is define a solution architecture that enables the service provider to manage the last mile QoE and effectively enable these types of business models. Next slide, please. So collaboration is kind of the overall theme that's very important in this space, and a number of number of worthwhile points to think about. From an advertiser's point of view, or even a content provider's point of view, advertisers and content providers don't really want to deal with, every single service provider, in a different way. They want some kind of a uniform front and uniform interface that they can deal through. So that's going to be very important, is for service providers to figure out a standard or a common way of interfacing with content providers and advertisers. The other part is, from a subscriber's point of view, the subscriber doesn't care whose fault it is why the quality of experience is bad. Is it the service provider? Is it content? Is it the device? They just want an end-to-end good quality of experience. And that means that there has to be collaboration. We talked about collaboration on a horizontal layer. We're now talking about collaboration in a vertical direction. And of course, there has to have a sustainable business model for everybody. There has to be some revenue sharing among all these parties. So, what are the platforms and the frameworks and the APIs to basically achieve that? Next slide, please. So the way we see the Connexus architecture playing is, as the content providers start offering three-screen services, whether it's through their own IPTV service that's being extended for 3 screens, or whether it's through a CDN partnership, or whether it's a content aggregator partnership. At the end of the day, it's the service provider's responsibility to manage last mile QoE. So a number of different options, a number of different models, but the scope of Connexus is really that last mile QoE management, which may include a service provider CDN, or maybe have an external CDN, a third-party CDN. Next slide, please. So this transition, we believe, is not going to happen overnight, and so we think it makes sense that this will happen in several phases. Phase 1 is something that the service provider can do on their own without a huge amount of business interdependency on other third parties. So providing subscribers with QoE-based SLAs, and the idea is moving from simple tiered services based on tonnage or volume to tiered services based on quality of experience tiers. And that is an important step that we believe service providers need to take in order to begin to create the momentum to monetize video services and to introduce quality of experience to customers in exchange for some money. Now, we don't believe that having subscribers pay for quality is the ultimate solution. We don't think the subscribers alone can bear the true cost of what it takes to deliver good QoE especially over a wireless network. So this is just a beginning step, and we believe ultimately the content provider and advertiser has to come into the picture. So phase 2, we think that the content provider needs to participate, and one of the ways to do that is a premium CDN model, where the service provider has a CDN that they charge a premium for, gigabytes delivered at a certain quality or different quality tiers. But ultimately, we think the advertiser is going to be involved as well, because the advertiser will be motivated to have their advertising being shown and displayed at a certain QoE. If you get a video ad across to the subscriber, and that video ad is shown at a poor QoE, that really shouldn't count as an impression or a valid sort of potential a potential catalyst to a purchase decision, because effectively the subscriber hasn't gotten the ad. So there will be an opportunity for the advertiser to participate in this, and they will have the incentive to do so. Next slide, please. And once we have this kind of network in place, there's a number of different business models that will emerge. So we don't think that a one-size-fits-all model will necessarily happen. It'll be dependent on whether the service provider is a Tier 1, Tier 2, which geography they operate, whether they are a multi-service operator or a pure-play wireless service provider. So there's a number of different models that could emerge, and these are just some examples. the quad play model, I think, will be familiar to a lot of people in North America, where service providers who have already IPTV services over DSL or cable, they decide to extend that over broadband and wireless to offer a three-screen experience, and they do it in a bundled form. So that's one model for Tier 1 North American service providers and some European service providers. In the premium CDN model is kind of one step down the value chain, in the sense that a service provider is still offering video service through a CDN, but they're not grabbing as much of that video service delivery piece as a quad play service provider. So they have a relationship with content aggregators and owners, but it is at the CDN level, not at the content contracts and that type of business relationship. And of course, one step down further is a simple tiered services model that is perhaps more suitable to smaller service providers who may not have the scale to develop their own video services offering. So they may want to partner with content aggregators. And then there is kind of an orthogonal model that could apply to any of the three, which is an advertising in exchange for lower price plans, which has been executed successfully in other areas other than video by some service providers. And so we believe that that's a very valid model for video as well, that subscribers could opt in for more advertising in their video streams in exchange for better QoE, lower pricing. Next slide, please. And finally, in terms of what the solution architecture looks like, we don't believe that the service provider needs to dramatically rip out their entire infrastructure and replace all the components to make this happen. There's a lot of familiar pieces here that stay the way they are, and some pieces of the infrastructure that needs to get augmented to fit this new model, and there's a few new elements that need to come into place. So the core kind of concepts are that networks need to become more network limitation aware, more subscriber aware, more application aware, and a lot of the network congestion awareness and things like that, and the subscriber awareness, is a lot of those pieces are already there. The application awareness requires some further involvement in the architecture, and that's one thing that we believe is going to happen over the next couple of years. And so the Connexus ecosystem is open to companies within who develop equipment within all of these boxes, basically. And Avasi is one of the companies that develops the application aware piece of it, and of course BroadHop has develops the policy control and charging side of things. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Bill from BroadHop to get into the detail about use cases and monetization frameworks. Go ahead, Bill. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, I apologize. We have one more polling question that we need to address, and that is, in the next 12 months, are you planning to engage content providers to enhance subscriber OTT experience in any shape or form? And that is very interesting. To some degree, there was a little bit more uncertainty about CDN deployment, but I think that is a big, a big shift in momentum, in the sense that showing service provider willingness to engage with the rest of the value chain. And certainly, anecdotally, speaking to some people on the content provider side, I feel that there is also willingness on that side, which is great news. And so we think that those conversations will happen over the coming months. And And now I will turn it over to Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
That's great. Thank you, Monte. And yeah, I would also add that you know, the previous poll results just on question number 4, I think really do indicate, as Monte said, ongoing questions about the role of CN, but certainly a recognition and a desire to be addressing the problem and turning it into an opportunity from within the next 12 months around personalizing and monetizing the over-the-top video experience for customers. So what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about implementation examples, and although it is relatively early days for this approach, both Avasi and Broadhop certainly recognize the need to push the industry forward in terms of showing and driving demonstrable examples to operators to let them know what is the art of the possible. Obviously, we look to standards bodies for assistance in driving frameworks and ways that we can address these problems together in a standard way. However, as we know, real-world problems often don't wait for standards bodies and those frameworks. And operators today need the tools and examples to lead the way in terms of, one, addressing their problems that they may have in terms of quality experience, and also capturing the opportunity for monetizing both their investment in the network and the effective delivery of content. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about that in terms of real world. And on slide 27, thank you, Brian, really it shows some quick approaches to thinking about the problem. And in traditional models, excuse me 1 minute. In traditional models, we've really thought of it in terms of subscriber tiers, whether that's basic, enhanced, or premium. We've also looked at it in terms of congestion periods, video quality experience in the devices. And really all of these are very relevant approaches to thinking about how to address the problem. Basic subscriber tiers to premium quality experience tiers are ways that certainly can be used to address. Certainly certain video sources and devices also lend themselves to a requirement for higher and desired quality of experience, whether those are tablets or laptops combined with movie content or video content. Typically a user would be looking for and willing to pay more for higher quality video from that perspective. And then really combining that with understanding what's going on in the network. During off-peak periods, certainly there's ample opportunity on a best effort, fair usage component to deliver good quality. But when that network becomes congested, certainly then there are issues for all users on the network, and we really want to give the operators and the subscribers the opportunity to make some choices in real time about the opportunity to upgrade their quality of experience and really think about the value equation at that point in time. So really what we're talking about is understanding the application requirement, application aware, understanding the subscriber experience requirements, either from an SLA based, what their tier is, and also the video content itself, what the requirement for quality of experience is for that video content, and really combining that into a framework for delivery that allows both the subscribers and the operators to adjust in real time and maximize the experience in a win-win way. Over the slide, please, Brian. And when you look at the components of this, obviously on the application side, there's various elements of protocol-based considerations, video quality experience based on the type of content itself, as we discussed before, and also the encryption technology that's being used. On the subscriber side, where we typically tend to focus a fair amount from a Broadhop standpoint, from the policy side, we really look at user profiles, their usage history, behavior on the network, and their service tiers, simplest approach being the gold, silver, bronze approach, but then also giving the subscribers options in real time to upgrade. On the network side, certainly you've got current network conditions, congestion, in terms of managing quality of experience in real time and the difficulties of addressing QoE when a network is congested, the cost associated with adequate delivery, and really making sure that the reinvestment cycle and the investment cycle matches the revenue that's being driven by both content delivery and additional incremental modes of supplementing revenue with ads in real-time enhanced services, for example. Then, of course, time and location-centric applications and content based on a user profile, where they might be, and time of day as an example. You may have specific content that is more valuable to a business user who may be roaming at a particular period of time of day, both to the advertisers but also to the user as well. So all of these aspects of the application, subscriber, and network really make up the factors of effectively harnessing the value proposition in the over-the-top video. Over the slide, please, Brian. So when you look at a typical example of what we're doing, first of all, from a challenge standpoint, you have multiple subscribers, essentially, with different quality of experience, expectations, and demands for viewing content based on which device they're looking at, what content they may be looking at, time of day, congestion period as well. And really what we need to be able to do here is create a win-win. A win for the subscriber because, as Mate said, the subscriber really doesn't care whether it's a device-based issue, whether it's a network-based issue, or whether it's a network-based, content-based issue as well. All they know is whether the experience has been positive or not. So we want to understand and deliver a couple of solutions in this case. One is make sure that subscriber expectations are being met in a way that they understand, so really normalizing the basis for quality delivery and setting those expectations, giving them options where it makes sense, for example, in congested periods of time, and then also, certainly from the operator standpoint, achieving profitability from the equation as well. So creating a win-win can often look like giving the subscriber knowing who they are, what profile they may be, and understanding the state of the network, giving them an opportunity, as an example, to upgrade quality based on the content that they're watching during a congested period of time, giving them the choice to elect to upgrade that quality in real time for an incremental pay amount to deliver higher quality to that particular subscriber. That is a real-time option that we deliver today for various operators, and it provides a win-win for the subscriber because they're in control, win for the operator because they can provide a better quality of experience and realize incremental revenue, and a win for the content providers such as Netflix, YouTube, etc. in certain areas of content because that content is being delivered and viewed with a high quality of experience and delivering customer satisfaction to the highest level. And therein lies a business proposition and a commercial model where you have a revenue split as a potential, but the upsell with the subscriber in real time and that commercial model between the content provider and the operator is a very real example of a win-win-win for operators, and how we can create examples that in today's world would just be a challenge and ultimately resulting in poor quality of experience and quality of service, turning that into a positive experience for the user in real time. Over the slide. Then I think as we start to look at the CDN option, and certainly CDNs play a significant role in terms of managing the efficient flow of content, but at the end of the day, there still is required in place to be the mechanisms for managing and measuring the quality of experience at the user level, and also being able to adjust in real time. So even though we may have CDNs being deployed with QoE-based SLAs, with content aggregators on behalf of the operator, or within the operator's network itself, operated by the operator themselves. There still needs to be a mechanism from the service provider standpoint to assure or guarantee those SLAs, and also add the option in real time to be able to upgrade the level of service as well. So really, for the solution here, what we're looking for is to arm the CSPs and really the CDN operators with the ability to manage in real time what is going on at the end user level, the end user experience, based on a subscriber tier, based on the time of day and congestion level within the network. So ensuring that subscribers have an SLA that is being delivered based on their tier, providing subscriber-aware services from them in that sense, and then offering the ability for them to be able to change that service in real time for additional incremental monetization opportunities for the operator to deliver that. And that would include advertising and content revenue as well. As Mate rightly says, those are opportunities where operators can supplement the revenue and the costs associated with delivering quality video, particularly in mobile environments. And from an example standpoint, we see this today in operators both in the U.S. and Asia, where they are actually supplementing their cost and their revenue models with both revenue models from the content providers themselves that are supplementing some of the content being provided to users and providing revenue share with the operators, and also on the advertising side, where if particular subscribers are viewing certain ads, are clicking through on those ads, and this gets to the next slide that Mate will pick up on, the operators are providing a commercial model that would enable a sharing of revenue and a supplementing of the revenue model for CSPs going forward. Over the slide, Brian. And I'll turn it back to Mate to talk a little bit more about advertising and some of the opportunities there.
Thank you, Bill. And one of the key concepts here is that QoE to a subscriber is a different value proposition than QoE to a content provider and advertiser. And so while the subscriber might be thinking along the line of, okay, I want, if I'm on my iPad, during a commute on a train for an hour, I want some level of quality of experience during that time for a particular program. The advertiser's mindset may be, hey, if you fit this kind of a profile for advertising and you're watching this type of content, it's of certain value to me to get you an ad at a certain quality, during a particular period of time. And that is another perspective. So the advertiser may be interested in subsidizing the QoE for an ad in exchange for reaching a certain target audience that they find very valuable. So that is another way for the value chain to increase its sustainability by allowing more participants in to fund infrastructure build and basically better QoE for the subscriber. And of course, it takes some effort by all these stakeholders to collaborate to achieve this goal. But we have seen, as Brian mentioned in the opening part of the presentation, we have seen these types of models emerge in traditional broadcast video, particularly in the cable industry. And while the technologies were very different, the concepts were similar in the sense that you have multiple stakeholders participating around a unified goal of good end-to-end quality of experience with video where everybody shares in a sustainable business model. Next slide, please, Brian. So now, getting a little bit more into the, the Connexus membership topic, which is, what we are doing in terms of, attracting different vendors and participants into this ecosystem. Connexus was launched with 4 founding members. That's Brahap, Avasi, Spirent, and Comprove. And however, this is open very much to companies in this space, more companies to join and to effectively, participate and provide momentum to this movement. The idea is that, collaboration is needed at all levels to, create a sustainable business model for service providers. And the more people that are collaborating in this space, the pie increases for everybody. So we're open to, accept other members into the space for both co-marketing activities, joint use case development, and interoperability, and joint solution architecture. And as we move forward, we're expecting announcing new members, new use cases, and commercial deployments as well. So for those interested in joining Connexus, please go to the Connexus-ecosystem.com website, and you can read all about it and ask us any questions. There's some contact information on the site. And also beyond network vendors, service providers, content aggregators, advertisers, there is definitely room to participate in this ecosystem, whether it's just providing feedback on, and listening to the conversation that's going on and providing feedback on the overall vision and plan, and also participating in maybe evaluating some of the some of the offerings, and providing your own perspective on how you see this playing forward. So in summary, we're open to as many people as want to participate, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. And Brian, you can go to the next slide. That concludes my part of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Brian for concluding remarks.
Thanks, Matej. So good content in the webinar. We've got some good questions that have come in. Again, I want to apologize for the technical hiccup earlier in the webinar, which has put us up over the time, but we do want to address some the questions that have come in. If you want to hang with us for just a couple more minutes here. I'll give the first one to Matej, and the question, it may have been clarified during your part of the presentation, but let's just ask the question directly. The question is related to whether there's a revenue share involved with Connexus. So I guess the question is there an alternative business model in which Connexus is somehow going to be sharing revenue with operators? So maybe just some clarification about that.
Yeah, I think what I think Connexus will be is a collection of best-of-breed network vendors that will provide a solution to the service provider, and then it'll be up to each service provider and vendor in a particular deployment to agree on a set of commercial terms. So there's no predefined model or anything like that. This is more about creating the solution architecture and the open framework to bring these solutions forward into the market. Then it's basically, it'll be each commercial opportunity will have its own kind of flavor to it.
Great. Got one here for Bill. I think it was addressed in the content, but essentially it's a question I think that talks to standards and whether Connexus will actually require a rip and replace of existing footprint of equipment. Maybe you can just speak a bit to that, Bill, how Connexus sort of looks at the fact that there's multi-vendor equipment deployed that already in place.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian, and far from it. Connexus certainly does not desire to rip and replace anything. And in fact, what Connexus is all about is creating ecosystem of multi-vendor environments, because that in fact is the real world, whether those are multiple vendors, multiple content providers, etc. So really what we are all about is being able to demonstrate real-world capabilities for operators and for content providers alongside a group of like-minded vendors to show how real-world solutions can be implemented in the pre-standard world. Now, we'll use pre-standard and standard interfaces, whether those are web-based or diameter application-centric interfaces throughout and wherever possible throughout the demonstrations that we're providing, and the interoperability testing that we would expect to see with vendors and content providers. But the objective is is to use multi-vendor, multi-standard approaches that provide real-world value-add solutions to operators and not require operators to significantly change their networks to achieve those goals. So we really want to give operators options and examples and real-world experience.
Okay. Matei, there's a question here I'll give to you, which is, I sense some skepticism in that around over-the-top video. So and the question is framed up as, do we really believe we're at a stage that validates the investment needed to monetize these types of services? So maybe you could just speak a little bit to what you're seeing out in the market.
Sure. Yeah, and you know, one of the pressure points that's coming to service providers is OTT video is 50% of their traffic on average, and you know, there's many predictions out there that think it's going to be between 70, 80, 90% of the traffic in over the next 5 years. So you know, that's where the pressure is coming from. Is if it's your cost but it's not your revenue, then what are you doing about it? Are you just going to tell the subscriber, you know, well, you can't stream video because that's what they want to do? So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. In terms of, you know, the timing there, you know, we see a number of different elements coming together that point to the timing being right. The deployment of CDN, certainly that is, what that is doing is more interesting than just CDN technology as a technology, looking at the fact that as service providers deploy CDNs, they are actually building an interface, a business interface to content providers and building those business relationships. And that's very important because that enables them to then start having that conversation about revenue sharing and those types of things. And, you know, but at the end of the day, look, the subscribers are moving to consume entertainment, you know, on demand, anytime, anywhere, on any device, and there will be, you know, there will be participants here who satisfy that demand at a good quality of experience and build a successful business, and there will be those that don't. And the question is, you know, are you left behind if you don't respond to this challenge and opportunity at the right time? So we believe the time is now.
Okay. I'll take the next one because maybe I'll use a piece of news just out of the trades today to help animate it. So it's a similar question, Matei, around where we're really at with all this in terms of over-the-top monetization. It was more general than just video. And Verizon came out with news today that it's planning next year to expose an API to its subscribers and ultimately upstream to content providers. It's calling it a turbo button. It's going to be available on some of its smartphones in 2012. And really what it's providing is the ability for, in a time of network congestion, to hit a button or virtual button and create a microtransaction and ultimately a payment from subscriber to Verizon to enhance the quality of service. And so I was asked to comment on what I thought about the news and so forth, and really I tend to agree with the guys. I think it's going to, you know, the way in which OTT traffic is monetized is going to happen in stages. I think that first stage is going to be a difficult sale for subscribers, frankly, because they're not necessarily going to want to have to pay for quality, especially if they've been conditioned for quality in their service that they're used to getting. I think ultimately the right model is where this is all heading, which is that upstream provider, that the YouTube, the Netflix, is really receiving the benefit of consumers that consume of Verizon exposing that API around the quality of service for their service and their business models. So I think that it will progress through stages. We're at the first stage. Maybe Verizon's a good example of that, and it's really going to progress over time. We really need the content owners to step up to the plate and start paying their fair share. I'm going to give this one to Bill, and this is, I mean, really resonates because it really speaks to some of the challenges we had on this webinar today. So we had a feedback problem, and the questioner says, you know, highlights the fact that overall quality of experience is sometimes more than network QoS, but driven by devices and outside factors beyond policy-based control. The the webinar uses voice over IP, but without paying extra for managed QoS, that wouldn't have actually helped. And ultimately, the question comes down to how can the mobile video chain be fixed without more control of end-user devices? So, Bill, do you have any perspective on that and where sort of the devices fit in the overall delivery chain here?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian, and it's a great question, and it really points out the fact that to deliver full QoE, you really need to have as much control as possible over every link in the delivery chain. And what we've been working on with several additional technology partners and operators is the ability to extend measurement and control out to the handset, both working with Connection Manager, some of our own and partner type applications that sit on the handset, as well as some of the chipset makers themselves who have the ability to expose additional control information to the network and the policy core, if you will, to increase the level of awareness of what's going on at the handset, which is really the true measure of quality in a lot of cases, and bring that information back into the decision-making process that is driven by the policy engine that we provide. So certainly something that we see becoming more and more important over time, where extending the edge control directly to the handset and partnering with ecosystem technology partners to not only measure but put control back in the hands of the user, where the smartphone becomes more of an intelligent remote control for them to be changing channels of quality of experience and service level delivery. Some of those may be premium channels, some of those may come with a basic package, but to extend the intelligence of the network to the handset, in our view, is where this is all heading.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We're up past about 10 minutes into the lunch hour here, so I'm going to call it. There's a bunch of questions with regards to membership into Connexus and when Connexus will be out speaking to people. So I refer everyone to the URL